Good morning, Lori. How are you?
Good morning, Matt. I'm doing okay. Lovely weather here in Texas.
Is that sarcastic? Because here it's
No,
pretty gloomy today.
no, we actually have a stunningly beautiful day, and it will probably be 90 degrees or better.
Huh.
It's currently 73 degrees.
That's what I'm moving to Texas tomorrow. That's it.
it, it's apparently a very common trend to move, especially to Austin. Although, quite frankly, though not nearly as interesting, both Dallas and Houston are higher salary and lower cost of living cities.
Interesting. And I guess that's much better also than the LA or
Yeah,
San Francisco.
I spent 40 years in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
You couldn't pay me to move back to California.
I mean, for me as a Canadian, in the cold and rainy, snowy weather, California seems really attractive.
It is, and that's its strong suit. There's
Yeah.
actually a lot of beautiful places to visit, but when you live there, it's so crowded and expensive, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very good point. Right, so let's just get started. We have a few questions to go through. Then there's 3 points that Gustavo and Dimitri brought up on the post that I had for you. So we'll go through that afterwards. So let's just get started with how long you've been in e-commerce. What's your background?
So, I mean, my background's pretty insane. I started out college in clothing and textile design and business and ended up nearly finishing electrical engineering degree. I don't actually possess an EE. And then ultimately I finished college, I can't speak today. You'd think it was a Monday. With a bachelor's in business with a concentration in e-commerce. And I did that fairly late in life. It just reached the point where, from a career standpoint, success was no longer enough. I needed a degree. So I went into the area that fit what I was doing professionally. And that's how come I am actually, there's not a lot of people in the country with e-commerce degrees. I actually have one. So along the ways, I did a lot of different things and ended up at the turn of the century, moving into the realm of the internet, fairly new technology still at that point. I fell into it, helping to design an online brokerage and financial services firm. And I was in that industry at the time. One of the reasons they hired me to design what they were trying to do. And that company no longer exists, but E-Trade is actually very similar to where we were going. Was because at the time I was a stockbroker and financial analyst. I worked for the owners of my firm and was one of the first to find a way to speak publicly online and still be in full compliance with NASD requirements. So I used to run the investment area and mutual fund area for a company called Sage Online that is now part of Reuters. And we ran AOL's financial area, everything except the stocks, which was Motley Fool. And we also ran Yahoo Finance, most of the content that went on that section. So that's kind of where I got into, between the two companies, started writing and doing online marketing in the beginnings of SEO. Before it was SEO, it was clearly already stepping up to how do you make sure your site is noticed above all others. And from there, migrated into a consulting practice and then ultimately ended up in product-based e-commerce in 2003. So I've been doing that now for more than 17 years. So that's kind of where I went. And over the years, because my focus has been primarily either startups or, I've worked for companies as large as $300 million, but typically I was either creating their online sales channels or fixing one that wasn't successful. So that's given me the unique opportunity to understand the entire value chain, from sourcing products and setting pricing and establishing margin to everything that happens in between before it ships and ensuring customer happiness. So that's kind of why my knowledge is as diverse as it is. It's also clearly aimed towards smaller companies. I wouldn't have the experience level to run a Nike, but I can certainly run an awful lot of businesses that wish to be. So that's my background.
That's quite the extended, varied background. In a nutshell, I think you know your stuff, basically.
Yeah.
So tell me, I know your company is called Redline Minds. What does it do? What's your focus with that company?
Our focus is clearly e-commerce. We unless it's a favor to somebody, we don't even work with companies that aren't selling products. We are product-based. We are equally comfortable with those that sell strictly to the consumer market, those that sell strictly to businesses, and those that are hybrids. And in fact, I'd say we have a real good expertise on those hybrid businesses, as well as B2B, that a lot of firms that are similar in size just don't have. And what makes Redline Minds unique, in addition to the depth of experience that we have, I have some people on my team that have been building websites for more than 25 years. So we're super experienced, but it's really all about efficiency, whether we're building or we're marketing. That again, my background in a small company meant I take that back. I worked for one company where I could spend anything I wanted as long as I delivered, but that's rarely the case. And so it really becomes all about efficiency. You have assets, that's your time and your money and your people's time. So how do you use them as efficiently as possible so that you grow faster? And so everything from the way we kind of look at site design to where do we start to market? How do we grow my company is a big question, is all focused on what do you have that we can work with, and how do we use that to get you moving in the right direction, and then we can expand out from there. So that's really kind of a unique focus.
So do you have a preference between, maybe just a personal preference or in terms of your business services, but between the design building aspect and then the marketing or strategy of how to grow the company, or you just cover both equally?
Well, we actually, when we started, there were two of us working in the business, and my partner was the graphic designer and the UX programmer, and I was both running the company, marketing the company, and doing all the marketing services for customers. And as we've grown, I just don't have the time to personally do much of that. I still have a couple accounts that I'm doing. So we dropped some things, like I don't do advertising management at the moment. I'm not, we don't do public relations or video marketing, although we do YouTube optimization. And that's temporary, primarily because I need to build in the right players or partners to offer those services, and do so both at the price point that I feel is appropriate and with the approach, because again, our approach has always been a little more than a little unique to the industry. And, again, we're focused on delivering expected or better returns. So the design builds are really fun. The other thing that I have some extreme expertise, and it kind of feeds both my creative personality, because remember, started in design, ended up in engineering, ended up in business. So what makes my world rock? I love doing technology stack planning and implementation. It's what goes with what. How do we plan now so that we're not overspending, but we want to plan to grow so that we're not replacing pieces, and it's like when we talk about shopping carts out there, and there's, I don't even know how many choices. Every time I get into a conversation with people, I find out about stuff I didn't know existed. So there's probably 200 or 300 ways you can go. But again, especially if you're a smaller and rapid growth phase, you're not spending $40,000, $50,000 a month to run a store. You just can't. Nor would I even say you should until your needs reach that point. So where do you start? to minimize the risk you even have to change shopping carts and re-platform. What email service should we use? What about inventory management? At what point should we move into something more sophisticated? How do I handle drop shipping? There's just, again, so many moving parts to an e-commerce business, and pulling together that puzzle is really a lot of fun. It kind of rocks my boat.
I understand. No, I love this field as well. Rocks your boat.
Yeah.
So I'm sure for people watching this that they're probably wondering, what kind of results you've gotten for e-commerce stores, or at least I was wondering. Can you share a little bit anything in terms of results, impact that you've had on those businesses?
So it's so unique to the business. I mean, I've had some things I'm really proud of, and I've had some companies fail. And I'm going to state straight out, and I don't think this is an ego statement, through no fault of my own. For example, like almost exactly a year ago, we had a company here, actually locally, and our clientele is global. We've done less locally in Austin than we have other places. Really sweet older couple. They had been, they'd been doing food prep and delivery, kind of like a Blue Apron, long before any of those existed. They'd already been in business for 15 years. They produced a very healthy product. They had 25,000 five-star reviews. I mean, really just an excellent product. They were packaging it 3 servings to a package to keep both the packaging waste down and pricing down. So they were very fairly priced. But they had made numerous missteps, initially not keeping up with technological changes, but even in their marketing. I guess they'd been burnt a few years back, so they didn't trust anybody, and they were trying to self-market and doing the second worst job I've ever seen of it. I mean, if you were going to take a playbook of exactly how not to do your marketing, their documentation would have been proof. So they recognized step 1 was to redo the website. And to date, although we have some we're about to release, that was our most glorious website we ever built. It was beautiful, went against what I would call standard standard operating procedures, and completely redid their navigation, which, for those who do SEO, I can already feel them going, yeah, no, we wiped out most of their categories, set up a very different structure, added filtering, we created a page where you could literally order in quantity as you saw fit off their entire menu, or per a style of eating like paleo or Whole30. They were Whole30 certified, or keto, or just maybe you just like Texas food and you want that King Ranch casserole. You could literally just narrow the field, which is the whole point of filters, instead of going to 14 categories, because what they had done was they had main courses and desserts and sides, and it's like, wait a minute, if I'm eating paleo, I just want to see the paleo menu, let me pick. So we created this really amazing category page, and then the other major revision was in the checkout flow had been strangely convoluted. It took about 10 minutes to check out. And so for the first time in my experience, when we launched, we had an immediate 40% increase in conversion rate, and the time on site dropped by about 1/3. So the conversion rate was amazing. What was more amazing was that their actual time on site dropped, average order value went up, and conversion rate went up, which is certainly an unusual combination. Yeah. And then they came to us and said, we're on the verge of having to go close our doors. We need your help marketing, but after the build, we don't have any money left to pay you. And so I said, let me look at what you're doing. So I opened up all the usual places to analyze that and said, oh, you can afford me in a heartbeat. And again, I tend to take these mom and pops really to heart. So I gave them a heck of a deal on a monthly quote. And then, but which of course was exclusive of advertising. And she goes, what do you mean? I can't afford you. I just told you what my net profit per month is. And I said, yes, you can, because I'm going to shut off all your ads. And they went, what? And I said, you're spending $14,000 a month combined on Google and Facebook with goose egg returns. And they said, no, that's not possible. That's not possible. And I pulled out all kinds of reports. I not even from an assisted conversion. These were not effective campaigns. They were just awful. And their Facebook was delivering a little bit in an assisted capacity, but not enough to justify the spend. It wasn't even close to a break even. And, in the old days, if you ran Facebook ads that were full of text, Facebook just didn't approve them. Now they just give you a really low quality score, suck your bleed, your spend, and show them anyway. So I think even somebody who's been successfully doing Facebook ads for 6 months would have immediately realized how bad these campaigns were. But they hemmed and hawed, and they were afraid to make a decision and afraid to make another misstep. And they ended up shuttering in July. So what was going to be a wonderful case story for us, case use, I would have paid for ourselves and turned them around in 30 days. Not a promise I can make most companies. Most companies aren't blowing it so badly we can do that. Yeah. The last employer that I had, actually my partners and I had before we formed Redline Minds, was already a very profitable $300 million a year company recycling electronics. And they were running 2 eBay stores to the tune of about $3 million a year. And I was brought in to create a direct channel. The interesting thing is they wanted that direct channel based on the common misperception that they would save the eBay fees, and without realizing they would spend that and more to build an audience for the website. But again, I found some, in analyzing the business and what they were doing, figured out a unique strategy to capitalize on. And we soft launched in November, and 5 months later, we're doing $1.2 million a month on the website. And if they hadn't blown up their supply chain, which is another story, that would have been my best success story in terms of your dollars, because we were on target to hit $25 million the first year.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Yeah, that would have been really fun.
Yep.
So in my experience, there are some that have done much better. And in fact, we're working with a company now that makes fishing lures, and we're definitely providing significant value to them. And then I have other companies that have gone under, again, not through something I couldn't control. So.
Okay. Can you share maybe some of the mistakes that you see those stores? You kind of talked a little bit about it, but can you dive a little bit deeper into some of the mistakes, the biggest mistakes you see those e-com store owners make? So,
I think most of them fall into just a few real basic categories. Number one is, especially for news stores, they've never really identified who their target customer is. In the trade, we call that building out a customer persona or a customer avatar. And it's a real pain in the behind exercise. But what you're really doing is creating a fictitious person that describes as many possible attributes to who they are and their personality and what they do and what their interests are. And the whole point is to say, what value is my business going to bring to their life? If you don't know what they need and what they want, you can't answer that question. If you don't know where they hang out, you don't know where to market. If you don't know where their emotional buttons are, you don't know what copy and imagery is going to resonate and get them to take action. So, I've actually gotten into wars with people on some of these Facebook groups, where they say, oh, no, you don't have to draft a business plan or do any of this work. Just put up a catalog and sell. And the latter is usually a recipe for failure because you haven't done your homework. You haven't figured out what you need to do. I mean, the idea that you're coming up with a website and a product that is so unique it doesn't already exist in the marketplace is very, very low. So you have to know how you're bringing something new and interesting, or there's no reason to buy from you. And even when it comes to products, if you create something really innovative and new, and that still is absolutely happening, the reality is people are already allocating their money to other things. They don't know about your product. They don't know about your service. They don't know why they should care. And you have to be able to answer those questions, and as well as, make them aware that you exist. So it's really tough the field of dreams that used to exist. We will put it up and they will come is dead. You will never launch a website and gain any business if you're not actively marketing. And in order to market effectively and efficiently, you better know who you're marketing to. And again, what's going to make them care about you.
Okay, that's number one. Any other mistakes that you'd like to mention?
So, number two would be your customer is probably not you. They don't think like you. They're not motivated to do what you want them to do. And again, leading back to the persona, it really pays to understand when people are coming to your site, what their experience is and how they see it from their viewpoint. If you make all your assumptions based on, well, I like this and I like that, unless everybody's exactly like you, and some of that does exist, you're probably not going to see the sales that you want. And that's where the use of tracking tools, they've actually got tools that can monitor where eyeballs go. But, even just click maps and understanding how people behave on your site and where they go and where they leave can be enormously powerful information to help you set up your store better to convert. Those tools used to be very expensive. Now, if your traffic's not too high, you can use some tools like InspectLit and Hotjar for free. I like Lucky Orange. I find that suite of tools, which is all of $10 a month, to be super user-friendly for people who aren't technical. And in fact, watching what people do, including session recordings, can become rather addictive. So, but it does give you an idea of what's happening. The third mistake is, especially when it comes to conversion optimization, there is no shortage of programs out there that want to convince you that their tool is just going to be the magic pill to converting. And when your store is small and your traffic isn't substantial, it's very hard to even test the value of these tools. But one of the things, and certainly if even the discussions in your group this week have pointed to actually the last two attitudes, that we were talking about not making assumptions about your people. We were talking about pop-ups, and I know we're going to answer this question probably a little bit more in depth. I think as store owners, most of us hate them, absolutely hate them. And yet I've done the math, they actually work. And when I say they work, I'm talking about the email gathering pop-up, which you really, really need. Your email list is potentially your most profitable marketing channel. So you've got to gather that email. What's more, for many of the conversion optimization tools and retargeting efforts, you need them to add their email so that the cookie planet is associated with that email, so you can do better retargeting, especially via email. But because the cookie placement for ad retargeting would be a different type of cookie. But so that it's actually, unless you have a product that doesn't lend itself to email marketing, and they do exist, you need that one. But some of this other stuff that pops up, I mean, and again, now I'm thinking like me, but I also am a customer when I'm visiting stores. The little thing that pops out at the side that says so-and-so in Timbuktu just bought this widget.
Yeah, the
Why
purchase notifications. Yeah.
Yeah, why do I care? I don't care what you just bought yesterday unless it was from my store. Then I care, So it's not relevant to me and my journey as a shopper. I've never seen anybody prove to me statistically that it's helped. And the stores using them tend to be too small to do effective A/B testing. So, it's not something I would use. And, one of the things you do as a small merchant, because you can't afford a web optimization team, and you don't have enough traffic yet to even try to undertake that yourself, is to look at what big stores do, because they typically do have conversion optimization teams. And, so like I'll go to Nordstrom or Crate and Barrel, and actually Crate and Barrel has a fabulous, well-regarded conversion optimization team. I look to what I'm seeing on Baymard Institute, which is a research house dedicated to conversion optimization. And I follow their lead. Crate and Barrel doesn't ask you with the little push notification at the top on a desktop if they can spam you, which is really what they're asking. Can I spam you, please? We're just going to bypass your email box and do it. And to date, the only one I've ever agreed to is Facebook, and I find it intrusive, and one of these days I'll shut it down. I can't imagine having 20 or 30 of those coming at me every day as I'm on my computer. And I definitely don't want them all sending me text notifications either. I really want to limit that. So again, a tool that's commonly sold. Not only will I say I question if it brings any positive value, but I also question if it doesn't hurt in the long run. I think, was it Dimitri in the group was saying that he shuts tabs down the minute he sees them? And I do see them in use in a lot of different cases, including some reasonably, I think the larger sites I see using that one are news sites. BuzzFeed might ask you, but you may care enough about what their information.
Yeah, I think for users that really care about that brand, it might make sense. I think a certain percentage of people will activate those notifications because they want to get as much information and news and updates, let's say, about the site or new products or that sort of thing. But I think for most people, we just get so annoyed by those. I've never, I think the only web push notifications that I've turned on were for clients or websites that I was doing a mini teardown or something like that had them. And I was just curious as to what they were sending out. In my research, I found that they can be effective, but I think it really depends how it's done. And your users really have to care a lot about your brand for it to work at all. Yeah,
that's what I would think. Again, I kind of detest them enough that I don't encourage use. The other thing people need to be aware of when you go a little pop-up crazy is that they can slow your speed way down and interrupt the buy journey. Another thing a lot of store owners do is they forget to actually open their phone and experience their site on a phone. It's kind of amazing the things I have found. We have a client, we're probably going to launch their new design later today. They're using Reamaze, which is an amazing customer support platform with chat built in. But they had set up I forget what they call those little things on top of the chat that are supposed to draw attention to the fact you're there. And it was huge. And I just notified them. I said, on mobile, it's consuming 2/3 of your screen, and that's probably not a real good idea. So, and I've seen other things, tabs for product finders, again, useful things to have even on mobile, but take a look at where it is and what it's interrupting. Is it blocking content that's important? Is it blocking your buy button? Kind of amazing at how often these things are missed. I critiqued a store a while back where their mobile view didn't have a cart button. So if you added something to cart, unless you went straight to checkout, you had no path back. So we really, really, really need to take a look at what's happening on mobile, especially in retail. Stores are seeing 60–80% of their traffic coming in on a mobile phone. And yes, mobile still typically converts at a lower rate, but I would absolutely focus on that because Google's been moving to mobile first ranking for some time. Apparently come September, that I don't know what that means, but they're supposed to go even more hardcore. So all that bling and stuff you're adding on a desktop because you're staring at your site all day from a big screen in most of our cases becomes incredibly intrusive on mobile. And you do in most cases have the option, if you find it's helpful on desktop, to leave it and then just hide it on mobile. But really rethink all those things, rethink the giant images, take a look at how long it takes somebody to get through your site. If you still have 4 or 5 layers of categorization, which is how we did it before there were filters, or filters got affordable. It's time to start moving past that, because on a phone, nobody wants to go click, 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 click. Every extra click drops your conversion rates. So
yeah, they want to go swipe, 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 click. That's it.
Yeah, the faster you could, again, the discussion this week in your group, and I love your group. I think of all the groups I've joined in the last couple of months, because I mean, I run a bunch of groups. Yeah. Yours has probably consistently the best content that's useful. And I'm even learning new things. And by the way, that's why I do what I do, because there is no sitting back on your laurels. It's a perpetually changing marketplace. And I love to see the ideas of other people. I'm learning from various members. I mean, it isn't just that I'm learning from you, because I am learning from you. I'm also learning from the conversations and the questions and the answers that other people come up with. But
by the way, you say you love my group, but my group apparently loves you. I've had some comments of people saying, we love Lori.
And nobody's called me a raging crazy, you know what?
Nope.
I have been called that in a couple other groups. The funny thing is, when they do that, I'm usually the mods. They're called.
Oops.
Well, you know, your group is really more fact-based, although there's always opinions when it comes to conversion options. You know, like I'm staring at Dimitri's comment here, the spin to win opt-in actually gets better engagement than the standard pop-ups. And, you know, and he's not the only one who's had that experience. And it's really good to know, because I find the wheel kind of hokey, but if it works, it works. And that's true for all these things, is sometimes what annoys the heck out of you is irrelevant if it works. But just try to not slow down the buyer experience. And there's just a lot of things people do on their product pages that disrupt the buying process, because they want, oh yeah, I want you to look over here too. You like this, we want you to see these things too, and we want you to see that. And, you know, let's upsell you. You know, when you're ready to click the button and go to checkout, we're going to interrupt that by introducing 3 more products you might like. And there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. You know, I think I have to be careful to not say, don't ever do this. I'm saying that there really kind of needs to be a clear thought to how you're doing things. And actually with upsells, I'm still a little old school. I say take the order and put the upsell post purchase. Not every shopping cart has an easy path to this, but I love it when my confirmation page says, hey, you know, you just bought this. If you'd like to add these things, we'll cut you a deal on it. And that way you've gotten the sale, you've captured the sale, which is really your goal. Is to I mean, even if you'd love that order to be bigger, the reality is you want them in your funnel as a buyer. so that you can continue to remarket to them. But if you can hit them right then and there, that's really a pretty cool option. Have you done a lot of those?
I mean, not me personally. I don't run the stores, but I mean, we had a lot of discussions about cross sells, upsells, where to put them, what the experience should be. I mean, from what I see, I think cross sells, if they're done in a relevant manner, and I think relevancy is what matters most here. If you're recommending something else, like on the product page, or when you add to cart, or in the cart page, or even like you say in the checkout. After the checkout, post checkout, it has to be very relevant to what they're actually purchasing right now or looking at right now, right? So a lot of times what I see is product recommendations, what other people, this one not so bad, but if they say other products you might like or something general like that, and they just put other products from the same category that don't necessarily relate to the product you're looking at or purchasing right now, I don't see the added value in that, except it just distracts the user from purchasing the product that they're actually interested in. But if you recommend very relevant complementary products or things that they might actually like based on their interest in that one product, then I think it makes sense. So I would recommend putting cross sells in the product page or the add to cart action, depending on how your cart is set up, or your cart page. I would put upsells post purchase, but cross sells pre-purchase, if that makes sense.
So I think my terminology is a little bit different, and I think this is actually a good clarification point. So the way I see these product pages, so cross sells to me are things you may like instead. And frankly, I don't like them on the product page at all. And years ago, I used I built a store on a shopping cart that still exists. Trust me, the technology ended up not meeting its promises, but the research behind it was stellar. And his comment was, all that stuff on your product page, you end up with competing call to actions, and it lowers conversion rates. And my experience since then, and that's about 8 years, has substantiated that point. But I mean, if I'm looking at a red blouse and you're showing me green and blue down below because they're in the same category, and I really only plan to buy one, you may actually lose me. But what I found kind of interesting is when I look at the heat and click maps, you'll find that for all that research, that company's research did saying that they reduced sales, I didn't find that they did as much damage as you would think, because almost nobody looked at them. And if you look at the click rates on those bottom of the page items, whether they're related or cross sells, you may also like, very, very low conversions from them, which makes them wasted space, to be honest with you. Related items are what you're talking about, items closely related to the product. My favorite use is really a frequently bought together, which is much higher up the page. And the best,
which is what Amazon does.
Amazon does it for a reason. Although caveat, don't always copy Amazon. That can be a real mess. But we're using frequently bought togethers with good success. And I used to use if you're buying a hot dog, what goes with a hot dog that you might actually really want? Well, you may want some buns, you may want some mustard, you may want some ketchup, you may want some chili. Exactly. So those are frequently bought together. Back to the blouse analogy, instead of showing me a different blouse, which might dissuade me from buying this one, how about showing me the pants that go with it, some jewelry that complements it, maybe a sweater or a purse, because now you've told me how to use this product indirectly. So it's like I'm looking at the blouse and I'm going, that's really pretty. I wonder what it goes with. Oh, okay, I can buy these pants and these shoes and this sweater. And now I bought the whole outfit, and you as a store owner accomplished your goal, which is a higher value order, while doing the customer a favor. And you know, so I find that to be a more constructive use of, you know, that information. So
yeah, and I think that's why definitions are important. To me, those are cross sells. I mean, that's what I consider to be cross sells. It's other relevant products that complement this product or kind of make sense. If you're looking at this one, you might actually be interested in this other one, like the blouse and the pants or the blouse and the shoes or something like that. Whereas just other products from the same category, to me, that's not cross sells. That's just trying to promote your catalog, the rest of your catalog. It's not relevant to the user right now. I don't think that's a good idea, just like you said.
yeah, and
So it depends
that's
on your
actually,
definition of cross sells.
that this is actually a great example of think like a user. What is the, your goal is to get them to make a purchase. So don't interrupt that purchase just because you're hoping they buy more of your stuff.
That's it. But from a shopper perspective, if you're looking for a blouse, but like you said, you might be thinking what goes with it, then it's relevant, and then it can actually increase the order value.
Exactly.
And say, well, I'm going to have a full kit. It's going to be pretty. I'm going to fit this blouse. And I know that women really think this way, you know, fitting the colors and all that stuff. So I think it makes sense to offer relevant.
I think it would probably be even more handy for men because most men don't know how to dress themselves.
Good point.
Although they almost always care, you know, so that's why they like their women to pick their clothes.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's mostly women in my life that choose or help me choose clothes for sure.
Yeah. So for the guy, you know, I think it's actually almost more helpful, and that's also why companies like Stitch Fix have had the success they've had, is because they pretty much do the work for the person who can't in their mind. I mean, there are people who are super visual and can see the end product, and then there are those who just don't have that capacity, and so, you know, give it to them, and then you're both happier, you and the shopper.
So I'm looking at what we have in terms of questions and the questions from the viewers or the members of the group. I think we've covered pretty much everything without explicitly covering some of those items. Let me just see if there's anything else that.
Dimitri was asking about vendor inventory.
Oh yeah, I think that's the only one we haven't covered, because you've talked about some advice. You've given several pieces of advice. I don't think we need to do more. You've given enough value. You've talked about pop-ups, spin the wheel a little bit. So I guess the last one is just the question from Dimitri asking, does anyone know of a software for integrating or updating vendor inventory in real time? So if you could share your thoughts on that, that'd be great.
The best way to do that is to use what's officially called order routing software, because it's more than just keeping your inventory accurate. It's also facilitating your drop shipped order back to that vendor. There's actually several people in that companies, I should say, in that space. We're very fond of both Duoplane and Spark Shipping. Both platforms will provide that two-way communication. They also allow you multiple paths to connect with your vendors, some of which can be fully automated, which is really great as you scale up in time. But you may also be dealing with a vendor who isn't that current. Maybe they upload a CSV every day, or you want them to go in through a vendor portal and update things manually. So those two programs can do all of that. They can do API, EDI, email, vendor portal connections. There's some others that I don't have as much experience with, but maybe a little bit less expensive. I think Ecom Dash is one I hear often. I think that's not nearly as robust as the two I mentioned, but it may actually be a great first entry. Inventory Source, not a big fan of them because they basically try to hijack your suppliers and make you buy through them, which adds an extra layer of cost. One of the tricks to drop shipping is ensuring you're buying your products cheap enough to be competitive and have a good margin. And so the more layers you have in between you and the manufacturer, the less margin you're going to have. So I've run dropship companies too.
You've done it all, it seems like. And I feel like you could talk for probably days about your experience in different aspects. So
yeah,
I want to respect your time. It's been, like 45 minutes or something like that. So I really appreciate all the value that you're giving to the group. You're number one this month. in the top 10 in terms of engagement, comments, posts. So I want to give you a big thanks for all the value that you're providing and being an awesome member and a great person as well.
You think I'm a great person. We haven't dated.
I mean, as you know, in a professional matter, the professional type of relationship, yes. Thank you so much, Lori.
You're welcome. Thank you, Matt.
All right,
Take
have
care.
a good day. Cheers.